Hello everybody, and welcome to another Kingdoms Reborn video. And today I will be talking about food. What's efficient, what's inefficient, traps to avoid, how you should feed your people, at least in the early game. So I figured first things first, I should just kind of go through all of the food options. I have a little city that I built here. It's not efficient or anything like that. I just kind of plopped on all the food options. And to start, Fishing Lodge. Now, Fishing Lodge is far and away the worst food in Kingdoms Reborn. Typically, it just doesn't give you enough fish for the amount of people you have working into it. This one has a base of 114, and I have all the upgrades. I invested a lot into this, and it's still only giving me 16 fish per batch, which is just not enough to justify it as a building. It's something I would avoid just like 100%. In order to make a fishing lodge kind of sort of okay, you just have to invest so much into it that it's just not worth ever really building. It's something that hopefully will get buffed in a future patch, but for now, avoid it. The mushroom farm is definitely better than the fishing village. It does have the issue of it uses wood. I already have the mushroom log sterilization tech, so it's using a lot less wood, but it is something to keep in mind. It does just produce kind of a lot more than the fishing lodge typically. The nice thing about the mushroom farm is you can speed boost it in a way that's not wonky. And what I mean by that is you can't speed boost ranches at all. And when you speed boost like fruit gatherers and hunting lodges, I believe the way it works is they do their job faster, but you don't necessarily, because a lot of these like hunting lodges and fruit gatherers are limited by the amount of like fruit you have around or the amount of like animals to kill, you don't necessarily get more food, you just kind of get the food quicker, and then you run out of fruit trees anyway. So if you want to play it safe, especially if you're a newer player, I like to put down just the mushroom farm, because it's going to give me consistent food and it gives me something that I can sit here and boost. And then of course if you boost it, it becomes really powerful. Though obviously you're using your boost. But other than that, it's not that great. I know in my last video I said that you can like give it like a 30% buff and it becomes good in a jungle. Thing is you can also give your fruit gatherers a 30% buff, and as we'll talk about right now, fruit gatherers are significantly more powerful. They're one of the two like kind of S tier foods in Kingdoms Reborn, them and then ranches. And the thing about fruit gatherers is they get more powerful over time. So the way fruit like trees work is the longer into the game you are, the more they produce. So as the game goes longer and longer and longer, your fruit gatherers are just going to get more and more and more and more powerful. And so they get like mid game they're beat by like bread and stuff. Late game they can actually get like kind of hyper efficient if you're working on them. And then they also just give you a lot of good upfront food that is very useful. I always plop them down. I usually plop 2 down in between a hunting lodge. Reason being is these things can get pest traps, which if they're adjacent to a hunter, they get 30% more productivity. So it's kind of a nice synergy here. And then eventually I plop down a forester and have it cut cut non-true fruit trees and prioritize fruit planting, and you get like a nice big fruit sort of area, and eventually you can support more, like up to 3-4 fruit gatherers all in one little area. Now the downside of fruit gatherers is you just need like space, right? Like I can't expand out here into this part of my territory just because I need the fruit gatherers there, and that becomes like kind of an issue. And you don't want to have too many fruit gatherers because then you're just kind of like choking off where exactly you can expand your city, which can be a problem. Hunting lodges are all right, especially for the leather. You can kind of sell it early game and make some money. They're, I guess, fine early game. As the game goes on, as your city expands, there's just fewer and fewer animals to actually like kill. So your hunting lodge gets just less and less efficient, to the point where I would start kind of like paring it down to 1 actual worker and then down to nothing, and then just using it for the bonuses that it gives to the fruit gatherer. But early game, I think it's worth just like running, just because of the bonuses it gives. It's definitely like an all right food solution early game, like year 1-2. It just kind of gets worse as the game goes on. And finally, we're getting to kind of the 2 best that exists in this game, pig ranches and sheep ranches. So one thing to note is that you will gain sheep or pigs even if you don't have anyone working in the ranch. So when you plop it down, you can just turn it off and just wait for it to get 15 animals and then actually put someone in the ranch. And then it'll start like, slaughtering and giving you stuff. So pig ranches will just produce meat, and then sheep ranches will produce meat as well as wool, which you can sell for a very high price in the early game. And then it also is a good input for tailors. Sheep is better, in my opinion, than pigs, just because of that wool, because you just get more money out of it. Though obviously you need to research it a little bit. You don't get it from the word go. So it's definitely worth building both, like building pigs early and then moving into sheep when you can. Both will be super powerful. Now, the downside is they're just very large. Like you just kind of run out of space to put them. And they also take a very long time to put up because you have to clear everything in this very large area in order to set them down. And then you have to wait for, a long time for them to actually like get to 15 animals where they can be productive. Which is why I like pairing them early game with fruit gatherers, because fruit gatherers are going to give you upfront food right away, and they're really easy to put down, they're really small, they're really cheap, and they can get you through that first year and then get you to the point where your first pig ranch is going to be actually producing things. And these things can produce like some insane meat. It says 27 right here. That's definitely not accurate. These are kind of sketch numbers. It can get up to like 200 per season, and you can get some like insane things going on, especially if you drop down on like a grassland start. This is actually a forest start. I picked it because I didn't want any bonuses, just for explanation purposes. If you drop down on a grassland start, you can get even bigger bonuses for these ranches, and they can get kind of dumb, especially when you have like a bunch of them. So yes, both sheep ranch and pig ranch are the way to go, though obviously you can't really rely on them for the first year or two, and it takes a while for them to actually kind of get going. When it comes to farms, none of the farms, in my opinion, are super worth it. Wheat and potatoes are basically the same thing, except for, wheat can go into windmills and bakeries, and potatoes ends up as vodka. If you have to farm, cabbage is the best because it gives you the most like output, as long as you have high fertility farming. But they tend to not give you the same amount of food per person, which is ultimately what you're looking for, right? You're looking for high food per person, so you have excess population to do other things. And then as the difficulty pairs up, your people eat more and more and more, and so it becomes even more important to have high food per person. But eventually, of course, the gold standard of all food is going to be the windmill and the bakery. And really, this whole guide is just getting you to windmill and bakery, because once you get to windmill and bakery, you will just drastically outproduce any sort of like hunger that your people will have. So typically, I will get windmills and bakeries, and I'll put productivity books in my windmills and then sustainability books in my bakeries. So bakeries have large input costs, including wood or coal, which is kind of annoying. You should switch your bakeries to wood because they're actually a bit more efficient. Kind of a helpful tip that I didn't realize until kind of way too late into this game. But then windmills have a weird thing where they can't be next to each other. So I put productivity books into my windmills because you just don't have that much space for a bunch of windmills because they can't be near each other. And then I put sustainability books into my bakeries, like double sustainability books in every single bakery. Then I just spam bakeries basically, along with, some good old fashioned wheat to power it. All of these things should have granaries next to them. Like granaries are a really, really good building, just 25% production to everything. And then the reason why windmills and bakeries get so powerful is because you can have a granary next to your farm. It also can be next to your bakery, and both those are going to stack, and then you add the books and things get kind of ridiculous pretty quickly. But for early game, definitely stick to ranches, at least until, a patch nerfs them or changes things. And then fruit gatherers, because fruit gatherers long-term can be very powerful, and they give you a ton of just upfront food to kind of focus on. One final weird thing about food that a lot of people don't realize, of the things you can run out of, food is the least bad. So if you run out of tools, your people get really, really slow, and your entire economy can just collapse if you don't have tools. If you run out of fuel sources, then your people can get cold and they die relatively quickly, and they also work slower. If your people run out of food, they work just as fast as they would normally, and it takes quite a while for them to die. So a lot of times, if you like mismanage your food, if you're playing on a high difficulty, it's not necessarily the end of the world for them to run out of food for like a winter, because not a lot of them will die or any of them will die. And then you can kind of pick back food up in the summer. It's not something I'd like super rely on. Obviously, you know, if you're living on the life's edge, right, then it's very easy to kind of mess up and then everyone starts dying. But if you have a choice, if you're like, do I build another like charcoal burner to get coal, or do I sit down and build more food? Probably the charcoal burner, because running out of coal is definitely worse. So yeah, that's, I think, everything to know about food specifically. I know that having multiple types of food increases your happiness. So typically, even when I get to windmills and bakeries, I'll have like one farm producing potato seeds, because I'm probably producing vodka anyway. I will throw down like one farm to have cabbage seeds, or to produce cabbage, and, you know, have like one of like everything, I guess, just to increase the happiness. But typically I'll just kind of transition everything into bakeries, with probably keeping around these fruit gatherers, because they do get more and more efficient as the time goes on, especially as the forester does its thing, and as these trees just kind of get older and older. They just get more powerful with no really cap, which is kind of an interesting little tidbit to this game. So yeah, I think that is all for this one. Hope you enjoyed this guide. So yes, as I said, grassland gives you really big ranch bonuses, and since ranches are the best, grassland is the best. But you get really good fruit bonuses out of the jungles, which makes them also very good for food, though obviously you have to pay the medicine cost, which is like kind of crappy. Going into a forest gives you 10%, or you can pick 10% farming, which is pretty good like mid-game, because you'll like transition into a bunch of farms. But like, if you can pick a bonus that activates earlier, that's just generally any strategy game you're playing, you want power early, because that's just going to kind of start snowballing. So yeah, thanks for listening in, and I hope you learned something from my video.